What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for The Flash, Season 5, Episode 19, titled Snowpack. So obviously the title Snowpack is referring to the main storyline of the episode, or kind of the main storyline of the episode, which has to do with Killer Frost and the Icicle returning after a very long time of him not appearing in this season. But that's not the most interesting part of the episode. The most interesting part is obviously the continuation of one of the best storylines on the show and the main storyline of this season, which has to do with Barry and now Iris and Nora and the Reverse Flash. So that is definitely my favorite part of the episode, that storyline. I did actually really like the Killer Frost storyline, and I'll get to that as well. But first of all, I want to talk about everything to do with the main storyline of the season. So this episode begins where the last episode left off, where Barry ran Nora to the future and basically banished her to the future after what he learned 2 episodes ago about the fact that Nora has been working with Eobard, and he did this without consulting Team Flash or especially Iris. And in this episode, the trailer promised that there will be some pretty huge conflict between Barry and Iris about Barry's decision, and it definitely followed through on that promise. It also promised that Iris will go to the future, and I'll get to that in a second. But the episode begins with Barry and Iris having this argument about what Barry did in the last episode. It's a pretty great scene with some pretty great acting, and it brings up some marital tension in this episode that I really liked. I didn't really like that it was all resolved at the end of the episode in the one scene. I think it would have been cool to have that marital tension be over the course of the next couple episodes of the season, but at the same time, maybe in hindsight, once I see it in the future, maybe I won't like it, so maybe I will be glad that it ended after this episode. But it's just not very realistic that it ended after just one episode and just one conversation. But anyway, I do think that both those scenes at the beginning and at the end were definitely very well acted, and it definitely serves to bring some more dimensions to this relationship that I do think we're kind of missing in this show as a whole. And from there, we see 2049 and what Nora is now doing, where she, after what Barry told her and after all the conflict it caused, she for some reason went back to the Reverse Flash, which makes sense based off her character. And I do think this storyline is pretty awesome in this episode. I think this is the first time we've ever been introduced to the negative Speed Force. I don't think it's ever been mentioned before. If you don't know, in the comics, Reverse Flash has never been connected to the Speed Force, where it seemed like he was on this show. It didn't seem like he was connected to a separate Speed Force than Barry. It seems like he was connected to the same one that Barry created. It seemed like he created as well. I don't know. I don't think they explained that well in this season or in the show. But Reverse Flash in the comics has always been connected to a separate Speed Force called the Negative Speed Force, where he has slightly different powers, but also powers that can affect Barry's as well. And now that's introduced in this episode, the Negative Speed Force, where we see it kind of affect Nora as well. It seems like it's getting her very angry. I knew that based off the trailer, her reaction to Iris coming to the future and to what Barry did to her in the last episode was not very natural, I didn't think, in the trailer. And it seems like, I don't know if this is 100% true, but it seemed like she was affected by the Negative Speed Force energy that I guess touched her a little bit earlier in the episode, in this episode when Iris did go to the future. And I did really like the Negative Speed Force being introduced. It's crazy that they didn't introduce it all the way back in Season 1 when Reverse Flash was the main villain, but I'm glad they're introducing it now. It was very cool watching Nora run through it and to see her become, I guess, a villain. I don't think she's going to be the villain of the season. I don't think she's going to be a villain for very long. Obviously in the next episode she will be, but based off set photos and just things that I would expect, I don't think she's going to be a villain for very long, and I think Reverse Flash will end up being the main villain of the season, which I'm definitely very excited for. But the whole negative energy, Negative Speed Force aspect of this episode was definitely very exciting. It was something that I loved watching, and I just love the fact that they finally introduced this concept into the universe, and I really hope they show more of this concept. And also, obviously, Nora running through the Negative Speed Force. I always love watching these speedsters run through the Speed Force, like in Enter Flash Time last season. It's not as cool here because there's not as many colors and it's way shorter, but it is still pretty cool to see Nora run into the Speed Force. But obviously in this storyline, Iris and Ralph decide to go to the future to get Nora back, which was also pretty cool. Again, the trailer did show this, and obviously this was expected, but it was still a pretty cool moment that Iris and Ralph both decided to just go to the future. I really like this stretchy moment. We don't see his powers very often, but in this scene where they decide to go to the future and they go into the time spheres, apparently there are two of them, one for the future, one for the present. I just remember that in this second. But we saw Ralph's powers for a little bit, where he uses his powers to jump into the time sphere. That looked pretty cool. I don't know why he doesn't use his powers more often. I do because of because of CGI, but like in continuity, I don't know why he doesn't. So it's always cool to see his powers, like in this scene right here. This is like the most stretchy he's ever looked, like when he was inside the time sphere. But they use the time spheres to go to the future to get Nora back, which leads to the confrontation between Iris and Nora in a scene where Iris seems to be moving like at the speed of a very slow speedster. I don't know how she's doing that. I think that there's a problem with the speed continuity on this show, where you see in this scene right here, Nora is running at her normal super speed while Iris is running at normal, or not running but moving at normal speed as well, but she seems to be moving quite a lot for how much Nora is moving at her super speed. It is pretty insane, and I really don't like it when they do that, but at the same time it doesn't really bother me that much. But this is when Nora runs into the Speed Force, and I did really like the build-up of this episode for Iris to go to the future, and in a separate storyline for Eobard Thawne teaching Nora about the negative Speed Force, and that leading up to the confrontation between Iris and Nora. And we also see that Eobard for some reason cares about Nora as well. I just really like how this whole storyline is unfolding, and I liked how it unfolded in this episode as well. I like the build up towards all these moments, these cool moments, like with Nora kind of becoming evil at the end of this episode. I liked everything about the storyline in this episode. It's not as good as previous episodes, and I don't think it'll be as good as future episodes. This is like the midpoint of this storyline, but still a storyline that I really like. In fact, I love this storyline. Again, it's one of the best storylines of this show, and it's going to make this season one of the better seasons of the show as well, and I just love how it's unfolding, and this episode is included in that as well. The Killer Frost storyline of the episode was definitely not the best part of the episode. It was pretty good, I'm not gonna lie, but obviously it's not the part of the episode that I wanted to see. The people behind the show knew that, as the trailer had nothing to do with storyline at all. They titled the episode after it, and most of the promotional photos have to do with it as well, but the main thing people see is the trailer, and the trailer had nothing to do with it at all, and that makes a lot of sense to me. But this is a storyline that I did genuinely like for the most part. I don't think it was great. I think there was way too much family drama with this snowpack, as they're called. There was already more family drama with Barry and Iris, and I think they should have focused on that, because that was really good for this episode, and I wanted to see more of it. They really should have focused on that a lot more than including the Caitlyn family drama at all. It wasn't bad for the most part, but at the same time, it feels kind of pointless. It's not a relationship between Caitlyn and her mother that they really needed to explore, and the fact that Caitlyn's father died in the end, which I don't think was a death that was necessary at all. I don't think they should have done that at all. I don't think they should have killed him off, because he literally just got back, and it was kind of not a very emotional moment when he just got back after a very long time of, I guess, not being in their lives, and then he just dies for not really much of a reason. I didn't like that death. I don't think it was very necessary at all, and it's not like this is a show that kills off people unnecessarily for the most part, so when they do, it does kind of bother me. It feels like the death of, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, in Arrow Season 6, if you could skip, maybe 20 seconds, so you don't want to get spoiled, but in Arrow Season 6, Vigilante, aka Vincent Sobel, became a good guy, and then he died immediately. It feels like they did the same thing with Icicle, and I really don't like when they did that. So those are the two aspects of this episode that I didn't really like, the Caitlyn family drama, and especially the death of Thomas Snow, aka, or I guess he's a part of the Icicle. That was not necessary at all. So those are the two aspects of the episode that I didn't like, but I did like parts of this storyline as well. I did think that the fight scenes between Killer Frost and Icicle, which was a pretty awesome fight scene CGI-wise, obviously it's at night, and CGI I don't think looks as good at nighttime, but it's also probably way cheaper at nighttime. It's like the last time I could think of that they did a big CGI episode that was in the day was in season 3, when I'm pretty sure they had peak viewers, and they had the best but the biggest budget they've ever had, where in the Attack on Gorilla Grodd episode, or Attack on Gorilla City episode, where Barry fought Solivar, I thought that was probably the best CGI in The Flash ever. And although the Gorilla Grodd and King Shark episode had some pretty awesome CGI that probably was a little bit better, it was at nighttime, and it just doesn't look as good at nighttime. I'm not complaining. I do get that the budget is now probably lower, and it is very expensive, but at the same time, it's not as good. That being said, I think this episode had a slightly bigger budget than most episodes. It felt like this episode really used a lot of CGI, like Nora running through the Speed Force, or the fight between Caitlyn and the Icicle, or Barry using his powers quite a lot. Obviously, I think this is what they should do every episode, but they cannot afford that, so I'm glad that they used it in this episode at least. The fight between Killer Frost and Icicle, although it is at night, it definitely looks really really good. It is pretty awesome. I love, this is probably my favorite superpower of Killer Frost and the ice villains or heroes, and that's the ice slide that they can use. It's like Frozone in The Incredibles. I love that superpower for ice characters or ice villains and heroes, and this made for a pretty awesome fight scene in this episode. There's also Killer Frost versus Cicada, which also was a pretty good, albeit short, fight scene that pushed Barry aside. I didn't like how they pushed Barry aside a couple times in this episode. One, when he was incapacitated by one shot from the icicle, and then again by one shot from Cicada V2. I didn't like that, how they benched Barry or the Flash for this episode, but at the same time, this fight between Killer Frost and Cicada was definitely not bad at all. And the storyline as a whole, although it had some great fight scenes, there were some parts of it I didn't like, but in the end, I do think that it had more good than bad. Oh, actually, one thing I forgot to mention about this storyline, it's probably my least favorite part about the storyline, a part that I kind of rolled my eyes at, and that is near the end of the episode, after Caitlin tests her mother for if she has a metahuman abilities, and it tests negative for the metahuman powers. Later, the vial turns white, indicating that she is a metahuman. She probably is going to have a frosty side personality, which I did not like that moment. I am not looking forward to that at all. I thought that this episode, although I didn't like the death of the Icicle and Thomas Snow, I thought that at least put a rest to the Killer Frost storyline. It's not a storyline that I need to see more of in the show, but now they seemingly created an entirely new Killer Frost, or maybe this is the new villainous version of Killer Frost. Although I don't mind there being a villainous version of Killer Frost, I would much prefer Caitlin just be the villain, and I do not want to see Carla Tannhauser be a version of Killer Frost or whatever they're doing here. I kind of rolled my eyes at this moment, and definitely a moment, and definitely my least favorite moment of the episode, even worse than the Icicle's unnecessary death, because I do not want to see this storyline continued, especially in Season 6. In conclusion, I thought this episode continued a pretty awesome season of The Flash. I didn't love the Killer Frost storyline, but I didn't hate it either. I did like it for the most part, but what I did love was the main storyline of the season. I do love how that's unfolding, the storyline with Barry, Nora, Eobard Thawne, and now Iris as well. I love how they're handling it. I love how it's unfolding in this season, and as such, this is another great episode for The Flash Season 5, and I will give it a 9.1 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. If you want to check out my review for episode 18, which is titled Godspeed, you can check that out in the top right corner of the video. And as always, thanks for watching.